the podium, I think that is nicer.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Brussels for this first large event to present the second phase of the Innovative Medicines Initiative, so-called IMI 2. It's really a pleasure to see many IMI friends in the audience, as well as many new faces. So I guess that you are all interested to understand how IMI 2 is developing, the opportunities offered there. And the only point I would like to insist on is that IMI 2 is more than an institution, an organization providing funds. If you are only looking for money, and indeed we have money, you will not be successful in IMI. It's very important to be successful, to really be part of the initiative, to be interested not only by the funds, but also by the principles underlying IMI, which means that you should be interested in collaborating, in sharing with colleagues, with other stakeholders in healthcare. And that's why we thought that it was important to start this day during which you will get a number of useful information, how to apply, etc. But we thought it was very important to start with the vision of the founding members, the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Association, as well, obviously, as the European Commission representing the European Union. So without further ado, I would like to ask Magda Chlebus on behalf of the European Federation EFPIA to provide the vision of the pharmaceutical industry.
Thank you very much, Michel. Welcome everyone to this very important event, and we hope that today we would be able to give you sufficient information to allow your contributions and not just applications to the projects that would be described later today, probably the most important session of the day, but also you would have some hint of what is coming in the future and what is the general vision for this IMI 2 and what we are trying to achieve collectively within the industry, with many other industry sectors, as well as with the academic community, patients, doctors, regulators, and others. I would probably mention this several times during this presentation. And this presentation is done on behalf of EFPIA and on behalf of our Director General, Richard Beckstrom, as well as the Research Directors Group, who has contributed to setting the strategic research agenda for IMI 2. So let's start first with where we moved. How did we evolve from IMI 1 to IMI 2? What was our journey? And this journey continues, and there would probably be many other evolutions in the future too. But just a little bit of history. I would not spend a long time on that, but just to show you where we moved, where we're coming from and where we moved. So IMI 1 started with the simple assumption that if we manage to resolve some of the early research, early discovery issues, we would be able to reduce attrition and bring more safer medicines to the patients much earlier. And it was a time where we didn't know how this collaboration would go. It was completely new. You take it for granted today that IMI is there as an institution and operates with many companies, many competitors working together. But when we started, it was really new. And the fact that we still exist and that we grow and deliver great results is part of this success. But that was the very beginning. We very quickly understood that the vision, this vision, was maybe a little naive. And if we really want to make a difference, we need to address much more. So already under IMI 1, we started this combination of addressing not just the scientific challenges in the medicines R&D, but also started to address those elements of the R&D process which address not only our big problems, but also have a direct impact on addressing healthcare issues. So it was a combination of scientific challenges and healthcare challenges. We moved to addressing healthcare priorities, and if you follow the evolution of IMI 1 and its strategic research agenda from 2007 to 2011, you would see move from addressing just scientific challenges to addressing really healthcare challenges. But we need more. We have all these great results, and really have a look at the documents that you have in your pack and everything that has been delivered already, and much more would be delivered in the future. But one could ask, and so what, if we are not able to translate that into real impact on the medical practice and on the regulatory practice, on access for patients to these new therapies, preventions, and everything else? And that's the journey. What would follow on the future, on the next slide, is actually describing this last part. We are building on everything that has been achieved, the spirit of collaborations, the way we are conceiving the research programs, but we want to go just one step further, is to work on the impact and to work on something that everyone uses as a buzzword, but not many people know what it is in reality, the vision of stratified medicine. So the combination of these things would be explained in the slides that follow, but just bear it in mind. What we are looking after is real impact on the patient, on the doctor, on how the healthcare system operates ultimately. The challenges are there, and you know them. Despite all programs of be it collaborative or not, still the process of developing medicines is taking far too long, and patient access is far too late compared with the real needs. So certainly this is one of the challenges that we will continue addressing in IMI 1. But maybe rather than looking at just some of the technology and scientific challenges, we need to go across the entire value chain, across the entire life cycle of the product and across the entire life cycle of healthcare system in order to achieve a rationalization of this process and have this real impact on patient access. At the same time, beyond the industry challenge and the R&D productivity from the previous slide, we also have an issue for the patients. Despite the tools that we have today to better identify the patients who may better respond to the medicine, the stratified medicine per se, apart from the oncology, is not yet that widespread. This slide from 20 years ago shows the rate of response to the medicines that were on the market at that time. What we want to do is to really address the healthcare challenge for the patient. So combination of these two elements, the research agenda, the healthcare agenda together. And of course, one way of addressing that is to look at what is the hardest. And the hardest today is the vision of what people would call a personalized medicine, but which in the pharmaceutical world we would rather look from the angle of stratification, so we would say stratified medicine. We think that if we can address the challenges of the stratified medicine, this would also benefit all other therapeutic areas and all other types of products and prevention and healthcare management. So we have taken on purpose the hardest challenge of implementing and progressing this vision of going from full population to responding individual in order to address many of the challenges that I described before. And science is driving us there. Oncology has certainly showed the path towards that. We know that this is possible, we have the tools, and we can today much better develop these personalized medicine tools, methodologies, and products ultimately too. Now, the vision starts from not just the combination of the challenges of research agenda and healthcare agenda. We had also to say what is in that healthcare agenda. Who would define what is the priority? And no surprise, if EFPIA members came with just a portfolio of therapeutic areas, one would say, of course, the pharmaceutical industry just looked in a selfish way into their own portfolios and decided what is priority and what is not. So in order to start from a neutral base and really make sure that we address the burden for society and for individual patients, we decided to take as a point of departure for our mission, for our strategic research agenda, the WHO report on priority medicines for Europe and the world of 2013. And I would really encourage all of you to read that report. This should be on your, at your bedside, actually, every night. Have a look. Why? Well, simply because this report is defining what is unmet medical need and where the gaps are, and also what are the reasons for these gaps. So the report looks into those areas where there is no treatment, where the treatment is no longer adequate, or loses efficacy, efficiency, or where it is not adapted to a certain group of people, like children or elderly. And it looks also at what are the reasons for that. And it looks also at the diseases where the cost for society, not just for the medicine, but the entire healthcare cycle in these diseases is the highest. What does it cost for the treatment? What does it cost for the prevention? What does it cost for side effects, for hospitalization, for social security? And this is really important because this classification of what is the priority for healthcare systems, where the impact would be the highest, was really, for us, the driver of developing the strategic research agenda. It looks at barriers, at scientific barriers, and again, the combination of the two was the driver for us to develop what you see on this slide, our strategic research agenda. And you have it in your packs, I assume, so please have a look at it. And what you would see in the table of contents is this. This is the translation from the WHO report directly into the strategic research agenda, the selection of those therapeutic areas which the report has prioritized, where there is a possibility of a pharmaceutical intervention, because after all, IMI is a public-private partnership between the pharmaceutical industry and the European Union. And this selection, which you would see in the table of contents of 12 areas, it's a direct extract from the WHO report. So if anyone asks, you tell us that WHO report is the basis, is that true? Well, it is, and you have the direct evidence here. Compare the two documents. The second point is, so if we want really to get to this personalized or stratified medicine in the areas that are really priorities for the healthcare systems, for patients, for the society, what needs to be done? And again, the strategic research agenda is looking into 4 big pillars that would help leading us to not just nice scientific outputs, but would hopefully also lead us to nice healthcare outcomes. We are not looking at from, as someone said, from bench to publication to shelf. We are looking at from bench to the bedside to the medical practice. We go beyond that. So these 4 pillars, which look at some more fundamental science, which looks at change in the way the development is done, all new clinical trial designs, new sources of information, new strategies for collecting this information, new ways of interpreting, aggregating, interpreting the information so that we can do much better for the patients, to identify the right patients, so that the research is really adapted to them and that the research reflects much better the real-life situation, much better than it is doing today, I should insist. If we want to go into personalized or stratified medicine, we need to look also at how the healthcare systems work and how the patient operates in that system. Patients' adherence would be a very important part of the project, because this is where the information, the real-world information, is being collected and being reinjected into the R&D processes. Finally, we may end up developing also some vaccines, some diagnostics, and some medicines. We are doing that in IMI 1 for antibiotics, of course. The selection of those areas would be subject to many discussions and consultations, but this happened, and we may have as a direct impact some of those products too resulting from the IMI work. And by the way, you would say we compare these 4 pillars and about 20 different activities, and we combine it or multiply it by the number of therapeutic areas that are in the strategic research agenda, the 12 of those, and you would say, okay, so actually, what are you trying to achieve here? Isn't that spreading thin the resources? You are doing a little bit of everything, but where is the real impact? So that was also the starting point of a discussion about prioritization in the EFPIA Research Directors Group. And we looked at several aspects. We looked at where the science is ready to make a difference in the next 10 years, and where is the real need for a public-private collaboration and collaboration between competitors to achieve a result. And the combination of those factors, as well as the priority for healthcare systems and for the patient, so the unmet medical need, resulted in the identification of the first 5 big themes that we would be focusing on in the first years of IMI. Doesn't mean that the other areas described in the strategic research agenda will not be tackled. They will. If we have good projects, they would certainly be taken on board. But we really want to make a difference to the patients and to the healthcare systems. And therefore, the prioritization is looking as follows. So we will try, and no-brainer, of course, sorry for the bad word game, but here we would look first at neurodegeneration, and this is really about prevention and treatment of dementia. We are going to look into immune-mediated diseases. Those who suffer from those know how big a burden it is for their daily lives. No cures today. Very important to tackle those. Cost for society and for the healthcare systems immense, and science probably ready to make some progress. Metabolic disorders, and going beyond diabetes, although diabetes would be an important focus given the impact on society and healthcare budgets too. Infection controls, that would go beyond just antimicrobial resistance. We would be looking into vaccines, we would be looking at viruses, bacteria, everything that helps us to look into infection controls. By the way, one of the first important topics in Call 2 that you would hear today would be about the pertussis vaccine. And then translational safety. You would say it's not a therapeutic area, but this is a theme that is so important for everyone, for every company, and not just in our sector, that we thought it was very important to extract it because it would be an important enabler for any research and certainly for moving towards personalized medicine with better, more predictive tools for doing research. That's on the left-hand side. But you also see that there are some important enablers in the purple box. And these would serve the purpose of moving towards the change in the way we do research, the way the regulators assess the medicines, and the way the payers give access to them, as well as the way the healthcare systems deliver them to the patients. So these are the important enablers that would be implemented across all the other areas that are mentioned in the green box. And you would see here, patient stratification, novel clinical trial design, novel ways of assessing benefits and risk for patients, etc., real-world information. So you would see all of that implemented. So it is, in a way, a sort of a matrix, but we think that the combination of everything would help us to make a real progress for the future, for development of healthcare solutions. It's not just about pharmaceuticals. The vision of IMI2 is development of personalized or stratified healthcare solutions in an integrated way. So, to summarize everything above, what would drive the success? And clearly the success would be focusing on the challenges of the future. We are not trying to just resolve the current scientific issues. We try to anticipate what the needs of the future will be. We want to be bold and ambitious in our thinking, and therefore we would certainly look at the future as well as at the present. We would be driven by leveraging the value of collaboration, open collaboration, integrating as many sectors, as many players, as many stakeholders as possible in those collaborations. This is not about the size of the consortia, this is about the composition. We would look at the think big things, the topics, the themes that would allow us to make progress in a focused way, in a consolidated, comprehensive way. We would look into programs of work that would help us to move towards resolving the problems for the society, for individual patients, and for the industry at the same time. Doing patchworks of smaller programs was not very helpful, is not very helpful. We will try to work in a program way so that it becomes more transparent and clear where the science that is resulting from IMI 1 and 2 leads us. And finally, we would be looking at impact on the research practice, so practical implementation of everything we develop immediately in the research community, on the regulatory practice, the way of assessing medicines, and in the healthcare practice, the way the medicines are delivered to the patients, prescribed, also reimbursed, assessed, etc. So you would say, okay, that's nice. You say that, but how do we know that you would be implementing this? Well, this is just written in the IMI 2 regulation. So we have a point of reference. This is the list of things against which we would be assessed. And no surprise, if you compare everything that I described in our vision, and you would look at this list, you would see that this is clearly something that matches. So we hope that together with the help of everyone, we will be able to make a significant progress on this list of objectives that are written, clearly written in the legislation, which is a result not just of industry thinking around the strategic research agenda, but of a political process in which the European Parliament, the European Commission, the Council, member states have all participated. Now, one last remark before coming to conclusions. In IMI 1, and that was a criticism or not from many, the projects were generated actually in probably 99% from within the industry only. In IMI 2, learning from the past and knowing that we don't know everything, and certainly we don't know what we don't know, we offer the possibility to third parties to tell us what we don't know and to submit questions, scientific questions, that could be reflected if there is a possibility to finance them through IMI, and certainly first to invest in them from the industry side, that could be incorporated into an IMI 2 program. So we would like to encourage you to have a look at the strategic research agenda, at the list of priorities that I described earlier, at what you are doing in your research organization, and think about a theme, a topic, but not a topic text, a full project proposal with description of everything that should be done in that project. Don't recycle all the proposals. But if you want to submit a question, on the EFPIA website, you would find, and you see the link here, you would find a box, submit your ideas, where you would find a little questionnaire to submit your ideas. These ideas would be reviewed, and you would receive a response on whether this matches, whether it fits, or whether it doesn't. But please be sure that you really address the questions from the priority list and from the strategic research agenda before doing that. So to conclude, as you see, the vision is to focus on better integration. We are moving from something that is already great, IMI 1, to something that would be even greater, IMI 2, because we have such a good basis in IMI 1. But we need to move into another level of integration. And this integration is integration of the vision of the scientific challenge of stratified medicine and the healthcare priorities. It is the integration of healthcare solutions from prevention and treatment to even healthcare management. So beyond just the time where the patient gets out of the healthcare system because his disease had been just treated sufficiently. It would be an end-to-end integration from early discovery, R&D, regulatory processes, access, pharmacovigilance, everything. So the entire life cycle of the product, be it vaccine, diagnostic, or medicine. It is an integration of all sectors. Any sector can contribute within and beyond the life sciences. We think that technological solutions to address some of the challenges we have lie in the hands of those who sometimes even don't know how to spell life science. So when you think about promoting IMI2, think about those who are not the usual suspects of life science research. And finally, don't forget to submit your ideas. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Magda. We will now move to the vision of the European Commission, which will be presented by Ruxandra Draghia-Akli, who is the Director of the Health Directorate at the Commission.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very, very happy to see as many of you here today to this IMI Open Info Day. And without further ado, because Magda have done a perfect review of what IMI2 is from a scientific point of view, I would like to touch on to a few issues and start by saying that, in fact, IMI2 is an integral part of our strategy for EU health research. It has been in Framework Programme 7, and it became much more so for Horizon 2020. And when I'm talking about this puzzle of various initiatives that we have put forward that are now continuing or are new in Horizon 2020, we cannot forget not only the public-private partnerships, so IMI, but also our public-public partnerships. For those who are familiar, probably EDCTP, so the European and Developing Countries Clinical Trial Partnership is such an example, or AAL, another one of the public-public partnerships. We do have, obviously, our bread and butter, the collaborative research, where different teams can join into the consortia and apply for our topics. We had an enormous success, maybe more than we could bear, for our first call of proposal of Horizon 2020. And last but not least, the global cooperation. And here, just some of the partnerships you may be familiar with, our international consortia, be it the cancer genome, the epigenome, the metagenome, and the more clinical ones related to the rare diseases or the traumatic brain injury. And now coming the new kid on the block, the GLOPID, so the preparation for global epidemics from a research point of view. So all that, it's an integral part of a strategy that has been created, put forward, if you wish, mostly in the last 5-6 years, but based on a tradition of cooperation, because, of course, innovation is based on collaboration. Here, we have been in our Health Directorate at the forefront of all these types of initiatives. EDCTP was the first Article 169 initiative, so these public-public partnerships. Already in 2003, 2008 have seen the initiation of the first IMI. 2009, the first joint programming. These are activities of the member states where the Commission is acting just as a catalyzer, if you wish, but where member states are deciding on common strategic research agendas linked to a specific area of activity. We have been the first to launch an European innovation partnership that is in active and healthy aging. The very large-scale international research initiatives. If you are looking at those that are directly funded from our collaborative research topics, a good example would be the epigenome one, so Blueprint. Those supporting the International Rare Disease Initiative. Of course, we have been the first to pilot what has become now in Horizon 2020, the SME instrument, and the first call of an Innovation Inducement Prize that has been awarded at the beginning of this year at the Innovation Convention to an SME that developed an RNA technology to stabilize vaccines in extreme temperature conditions. So we do believe that IMI too is also on the forefront, and it has been from the very beginning. It is the largest public-private partnership in life sciences in the world, and we are very, very happy to see that indeed this ambition, it's not only maintained for IMI too, but significantly developed. And I'm going to focus on some things that actually excite an administrator. First, that IMI2 is not open exclusively to the pharmaceutical industry, but from the industrial perspective, we are welcoming other types of industrial partners, being ICT, diagnostics, animal health, vaccine manufacturer, imaging industry, so they could participate integrally in the projects and participate on the side of the industry. We do hope that these exchanges, this interdisciplinarity would foster the development of technologies in general, so not only drugs, and pave the way to developing new things, breakthrough vaccines, medicines, treatments. For areas where the pharmaceutical industry or the other industries alone cannot do it, it's too complicated scientifically probably, there are not enough incentives, maybe there is a market failure. Everything from tackling antimicrobial resistance to Alzheimer's disease are things that we do actually highly support in IMI2. Magda have presented to you the IMI2 strategic research agenda, and just a word, we are very happy that this is completely aligned with the WHO priorities as set forward by the WHO priority report for Europe and the world published last year, and obviously from a public health perspective, addressing real issues that are a significant burden on our healthcare. Of course, that these ambitious objectives cannot be accomplished with no money, and we are grateful to our colleagues, to the Council, to the Parliament, that finally, after a very harsh negotiation, we have arrived to a very significant budget from both the public and the private partners, almost 3.3 billion euros. And as far as the European contribution, this is shared. So a part of the contribution would be matching the EFPIA contribution, be it in kind or in cash, with up to 213 million euros that are to match additional contribution from these other industries that are welcomed to participate at IMI2, so members and associated partners. As in IMI1, the EU funding will go to the public consortium. Academic investigators, small and medium enterprises, regulators, patient organizations are eligible to receive funding, but as an interesting opening, companies with annual sales less than 500 million euros will be also able and eligible to receive EU funding should they want not to join the industry side, but in fact to participate on the side of the public consortium. Of course, the rules of Horizon 2020 by and large apply, which means a simplified funding rate and reporting. So 100% of direct costs and 25% indirect costs. So I said by and large because IMI 2, as IMI 1, benefits from some deviations from the rules of participation that are very, very well justified. These are primarily linked first to the types of entities that are eligible for funding. So for instance, the pharmaceutical industry is not, unlike in Horizon 2020, where all types of entities are eligible for funding. And second, but very importantly, some of the intellectual property provisions are in fact particular to IMI 2, and this is as they have been for IMI 1, and this is because the IPR policy is not only to protect results coming from the projects, but to promote this knowledge creation together with disclosure, and very importantly, with the exploitation of results. So this IPR policy has been designed to achieve a very fair allocation of rights, to reward innovation, and to achieve this broad participation of both public but also of the private entities. So the IP rules depart from the rules of Horizon 2020 only when required. So most of the requirements under Horizon 2020 in fact apply also to IMI 2. So another, if you wish, from our perspective, simplification is that all the calls from all the partnerships, from all the collaborative research in Horizon 2020 can be found on the participant portal. So you don't need to actually look to all other websites in order to find a call that is suitable for your particular research. On the participant portal with keywords, you can find calls that are open under IMI 2, under EDCTP, under the collaboration research, or when I'm talking about collaborative research, this is not only related to the health, demographic change and well-being challenge, but all the other areas where you might find things that are interesting for you. So for instance, nanomaterials or zoonoses may be found in other challenges. So if you're going to the Horizon 2020 calls for proposals and you look under the societal challenges, you will see also the IMI calls. And if you are typing the keywords that are of your interest, so there we have put type 1 diabetes, among all the other topics, or the possibility to submit to various instruments. So for instance, to a Marie Curie fellowship, or to other types of instruments, you would find also the IMI calls. So I would like to thank everyone for participating at this Open Info Day, and I think that Magda and I are ready to take questions. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Ruxandra. Indeed, we have time for some questions. I would like to ask you two things. First, identify yourself before asking the question, and second, I would suggest that you focus your question on the overall vision, the generic question around IMI2. We will have other sessions dedicated to rules of procedures and to the very first calls of IMI. So, who would like to start? First question is always the most difficult to get. Yes, please. Just on your left.
No, sorry. Good morning. I'm Goldman. Yeah, I'm George Sakelaris from the Czech Academy of Science. I would like to ask, from structural point of view, the Horizons 2020 proposals, they have a concrete direction supporting both the scientific excellence, societal approval, and business orientation. I would like to know if the IMI proposals will have the same structure.
I would say yes, and Sandra may want to comment. I would even say even more so, because we are trying to get tools, methodologies that would directly be applicable in research and medical practice. So yes, I think this is completely aligned, and broad industry participation would even strengthen the third aspect which you mentioned in your question.
So thank you very much for this question. Indeed, in Horizon 2020, the factor that gain in importance is the impact. And as a consequence, the topics that are put forward under IMI2 very much address this societal impact. As far as the process, of course, it has particularities in function of the instrument where your proposal is submitted. So in the collaborative part of research, you may have calls that are following one-step submission and evaluation, and there all the criteria are evaluating from the get-go. You might have calls where you go through a two-step procedure where at the first step the investigators are submitting an expression of interest, a short proposal, no more than 7 pages or a little bit more under the SME instrument, where just 2 factors are evaluated at the first step, which is excellence and the impact, and those that are successful in this first step are invited to submit at the second step, and then all those 3 criteria are evaluated, so also the management side of things. So it is a little bit adapted in function of the instrument. It's not only that is adapted for IMI2, but by and large, the big difference is the impact.
Thank you. Any other question or remarks? Yes, there. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. This is Colin Dyan from Cardiff University, UK. Can you help us understand a bit better how you've managed to bring the pharmaceutical companies into this initiative? I mean, the nature of business is that you need to have individual success. We see companies in the diabetes initiative who are long-standing competitors, and you seem to think that you can generate intellectual property that can be shared. Maybe you can just clarify for us how they've come to this understanding with you.
It was a very long journey, I should say, and it evolved, the vision evolved quite gradually, I should say. I think that the biggest realization at one point was that, yes, we are competitors, but there are certain challenges that one company alone will not be able to address, and we would be much better off if we try to address them together at a non-competitive or pre-competitive stage. Something that is not jeopardizing the competitiveness of individual companies, but which helps the competitiveness of all of us if we use better tools for research and development. So that was certainly one of the biggest I would say, directions in the thinking. The other one, which is move towards more open innovation in general, not just bilateral collaborations, but move towards open collaboration. And IMI was certainly one of those elements which contributed to demonstrating that this vision works and is supporting both the productivity of the industry as a whole and individual companies' competitiveness too.
I can comment a little bit. And as far as your comment on the intellectual property, you might have noticed reading the regulation that in fact the background, which is whatever intellectual property is brought in the project by each individual partner, belongs to that partner, so stays with the people that have generated the intellectual property. Of course, that one accepts that is going to share the data, the knowledge, the samples with the other partners in the final consortium. If intellectual property is generated within the project, then the possibility to jointly own the intellectual property exists. It is foreseen. Very clear rules are set up from the very beginning, and I have to say it because this is one of the things that, in fact, we do recommend, even in the collaborative research, the simple grants that you can find when applying to Horizon 2020, which is the consortia that really succeed to exploit their intellectual property are those that have an intellectual property agreement from the get-go in the consortium agreement, and not deal with how the intellectual property will be managed very late in the game when maybe they are not actually prepared or they have a process in place. So at least in IMI, they are obliged to think of how they are going to manage their intellectual property from the very beginning.
Thank you. I think that there was a question there and then here.
So Nassar Webena from INSERM in France. I'd like to ask a question about the fact that you have opened to other industries. So does it mean the EFPIA will not have the lead on some calls and it will be open like for imaging, for instance, or ICT? And we will have calls that will be dedicated to this?
We may, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a second little question, you were talking about programmation. Do you think you will arrive to a point where we will have a programmation like in Horizon 2020, like a work program on 1 year or something like this?
So scientific priorities are indeed defined for a year ahead, and this is the rule for all of us. So there would be a scientific priorities themes that would be addressed in the year ahead. Would we know exactly what kind of topics? I would say we would try to be as close as possible to defining that, but it might not be realistic. The reality is that we are trying to, in IMI, to launch projects and programs as soon as they are ready, which means that some of the ideas might pop up in a very short period of time, and our objective is to make sure that they can be launched also as quickly as possible. So they might be things that would not be defined 100%, like the program of Horizon 2020, but which would be set for funding anyway. However, the general directions would be set in the scientific priorities and would be known.
Okay, thanks.
Question there.
Walter Luijten from the KU Leuven. I was a bit surprised not to see aging appear anywhere on the IMI list of priorities, because it has been recognized as a major societal challenge by the EU, And several of the diseases that you have on your list, neurodegenerative diseases, the metabolic disease, arthritis, and so on, are known to increase with age. But moreover, there's increasing evidence that if you can slow down the aging process, that many of these diseases will also be affected and postponed. So rather than address individual diseases piecemeal, it might be more effective to look into affecting the underlying aging process and thereby having across the board health effects.
It is an interesting thought. Do you want to comment first, Ruxandra?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so first, I think we took it from the point of view of, as I said before, the WHO report and the priorities that have been designed there. You saw some names of diseases which are just examples. So it's not absolutely exclusive. All of the therapeutic areas that have been defined in priorities do address, as you mentioned, to a big extent also the problem of aging populations. When you look at the strategic research agenda itself, you would also see that aging is one of the aspects that is clearly defined there as, an overarching theme. So I would say it's too early to say that we didn't prioritize or didn't address properly. I think we need to see the combination of project proposals that would come. And as I said, if you have ideas, you are very welcome to submit those.
Yes,
I can actually comment a little bit on that one, because I think that IMI 2 should not be a duplication of what is done under the health, demographic change and well-being challenge. The idea, when I have shown at the beginning the different parts, the public-private partnerships, the public-public partnerships, the collaborative research, the global collaboration, clearly depicts the image of trying, in fact, to be complementary in our approaches. And many of the more fundamental type of research find their place in the collaborative research, and then specifically, for instance, in the Active and Healthy Aging European Innovation Partnership, in the AAL Public-Public Partnership. So if you wish, the problems are so big, and the issues that we are trying to tackle, they are so diverse that we believe that we should avoid the application. So from our perspective, what is happening now with IMI taking much more of the true applied, if you wish, part of the research and innovation cycle, and we fostering different other parts through the other mechanisms is, a way to go.
Last question.
I'm Emily Gale from the Medical Research Council in the United Kingdom, and I just want to say I'm very excited about the potential for these interesting new collaborations that are going forward in IMI 2. And I'm very excited about the idea of outputs and impact that you've got looking forward to. But I wanted to know how IMI is planning on tracking them, and how they will be made public, so that in the years to come, obviously, we will be able to see how these consortia make an impact on their particular disease areas. Thank you.
So, unlike IMI 1, for IMI 2 from the get-go, we do have very clear objectives. The key performance indicators are discussed, and there are quite a large number of them as far as outputs are concerned. It's not only about the number of publications or the number of patents and the citation factors this time around, but actually delivering on the objectives. You surely know that we have, in fact, looked at delivering 2 new molecules or vaccines or whatever for diseases which are of very big interest from the public health point of view, that we are looking at reducing the times and the costs for the phase 3 clinical trials. So those are transformed in actual key performance indicators, and they are going to be tracked throughout the initiative. And it's, if you wish, relatively easy to track things like how many days it takes for a clinical trial. And we have started already in IMI 1. So for instance, a new meds project have generated data that allow for the patients first to enroll less patients per arm of the study, but then to follow them about 15, 20 days less than what was previously in the guidelines. So all this type of data will be collected.
And maybe I can add to that. It's not an easy thing to make sure that a scientific result in a publication is really transferred into the practice. I think that that's also one of the reasons for your question. So it is absolutely important that in the projects or around the projects, we also have involvement of those who would be taking up these results in their practice. The regulators, the payers, the doctors, the patients. IMI and the IMI office is facilitating a lot of these dialogues with the relevant stakeholders so that they are aware of what we are doing and also can give us advice of what they need in order for this particular tool or methodology to be taken up in the regulatory processes. IMI is not changing regulation, but IMI is informing the discussion of those who are taking those results and apply them in practice. So if you look at the annual activity report from last year, you would see a number of areas where tools have been developed, where tools are going through regulatory acceptance processes and therefore would one day be part of the guidance, be it therapeutic or regulatory. And that's another way of making sure that we can transform outputs into outcomes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Magda. Thank you, Ruxandra. Thanks to all of you for your active participation. I think that we have now half an hour and take advantage of this for networking and perhaps discussing your future projects. Thank you.